Ladies and gentlemen, we now move on to our third inductee. So the third person to be inducted for season 2024 into the SSNA Ovens and Murray Football Netball League Hall of Fame from Wangaratta Rovers is Mick Nolan.
Recruited from Tarrawinji, Mick Nolan's massive physique matched the giant-size impact he made when he joined the Wangaratta Rovers Football Club. He finished runner-up in the Rovers' Best and Fairest in his debut season of 1968, before playing in the first of 3 successive grand finals in 1970, when on that occasion they were overpowered by Myrtleford in the final quarter. But the rest of the decade belonged to the Rovers, with Nolan a key member of the next 2 grand final wins in 1971 and 1972, with Yarrawonga the vanquished both times. A noted big occasion player, Nolan was named among the Rovers' best players when they fought back from a 3/4 time deficit to beat the Pigeons in 1971. But his best on-ground performance in the 1972 victory, when again the Rovers came from behind at the last change to win the flag, captured the attention of North Melbourne's recruiting legend Ron Joseph. The 1972 grand final match was Nolan's 101st game in succession, but would be his final match in the brown and gold. As well as the flags, Nolan also won 2 club best and fairests in 1971 and 1972. He was named as the #1 ruckman in the Ovens and Murray Team of the Century. Despite the doubts of many, Nolan excelled at North Melbourne under Ron Barassi and played in the Kangaroos' history-making 1975 grand final victory. 2 years later, he missed out on the Roos' next flag and finished his career in Queensland, where he became known as the Mr. Football of Queensland when he took on the coaching job at Maine. He played another 101 matches and was inducted into the Queensland Hall of Fame. Mick Nolan, a giant presence on the football field, and now a wonderful inductee into the Ovens and Murray Hall of Fame.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have an apology from Mick's wife Nettie, who's been in hospital in Brisbane, but it gives us great pleasure to invite to accept the award his brother Terry, and to speak on behalf of Mick and the family, John Burns. So can I please have John and brother Terry to the stadium, please. It's fitting that John will speak on behalf of Mick and the family. I don't want to embarrass John, but for those of you who don't know his background, John was a team member of Mick's at both Rovers and North Melbourne. John being a premiership player at North Melbourne in 1977. He played nearly 100 games, he coached the O&M, he represented Victoria, and he had a long and outstanding career with the AFL and particularly the Murray Bush Rangers. So if anybody is qualified to speak about the contribution that Mick Nolan made, it will be John Burns. So it's my great pleasure to introduce to you, to speak on behalf of the family, John Burns.
Thanks, Graham. Good evening, everyone. I've made a few notes. Tried to be well as prepared as I can for Mick. I was very pleased to be asked by the Nolan family to speak to you tonight about my friend and teammate Mick Nolan. I'm sure if he was here tonight, he would like to thank the O&M for this great football honour, and also thank his wife Nettie and his family for their support throughout his career. Just before I go on about the Rovers and also North Melbourne, I'd like to acknowledge that Mick was recruited from the Tarrawinji Football Club. He's in the O&K Hall of Fame, and he's well loved in the O&K community for all the work he used to do for them, just in football clinics and being involved in the O&K as well when he came home. I first met Mick when I was a young 16-year-old playing for the Wang Rovers, and then we were both recruited to North Melbourne back in the mid-70s. The first time I saw him play though was I was still in the junior league. We'd play our matches and we'd finish about half time in the O&M and we'd go across and watch where the Wing Magpies were playing or the Rovers were playing. But the first time I saw Mick, he stood out on the field. He was a big man, he was tall, and you may recall that he had a really quite unique body. This obviously created a problem for the team's property steward because his football jumper was way too short and his footy shorts were just a little too tight. But what stood out was his talent. He was a natural ruckman. At training, Mick could not hide the fact that he had a great dislike for running. He would always arrive at training just a little late, just late enough to miss the warm-up, which was 4 laps of the oval, followed by 4 stride-throughs and some stretches. Mick would routinely just jog a lap, then slide into the football drills, the handball and the kicking. He may have not liked running, but his fitness improved greatly over the coming football seasons. Early in his career, he was underestimated by the opposition, but his determination and competitive spirit made him a 4-quarter player. In my first senior game for the Rovers in 1972, Mick taught me my first football lesson. I had marked the ball in the half-forward flank and was then bowled over by the Yarrawonga ruckman. I was okay, jumped up ready for my kick. Mick was not having any of that from the opposition, so of course he ran in and bowled over the Yarrawonga ruckman. The umpire blew his whistle and reversed the kick. Lesson 1. Run in and support your teammates, but don't give away the free kick, especially when the person receiving the free kick was having his first one. In 1972, nearly all the O&M clubs had 2 or 3 big men in the team, but we at the Rovers had Mick. He rucked all day and consistently outplayed the opposition ruckman. In the 1972 grand final against Yarrawonga, Mick once again played a lone hand against Yarrawonga's big men and was clearly best on ground and a runaway winner in the 72 Rovers best and fairest. Local sports writer and Wangaratta Kevin Hill has a column called On Reflection about local sporting identities and wrote about an article about Mick called The Big Fella. In the article, Neville Hogan, Mick's coach at the Rovers, was quoted as saying that he only could remember Mick meeting his match once, and that was Cora with Ray Willett. Willett ran in front of him all day, and Mick steadfastly refused to change his angle. Neville suggested he tried. He tried to change his angle, but Mick just pointed goalwards and said, "No, that's the way we're kicking, and that's the way I run it." Ron Joseph, the general manager of the North Melbourne Football Club, was at the 72 O&M Grand Final, and it was keen for Mick to come down to North for the 73 season. Ron Joseph and star player Keith Gregg met with Mick at Tarrawingi in early December to entice him to come down to Melbourne. Ron Joseph was somewhat concerned about Mick putting on weight in the off-season and offered him a cash inducement not to go on the Rovers football trip. Rovers inter-season trip. Mick thought about the offer. It was a good one, but he passed on the cash and went on the footy trip. Ron Barassi wasn't too impressed when he first saw Mick in 1973 and wanted to know who recruited him. But his first impression quickly changed as Mick's fitness and skills improved out of sight, even though his duck shooting getaways during pre-season tested Barassi's patience a few times. Mick wasn't an instant success at North. He recognised that he had to work harder on his fitness in season and during the off-season, and he had to continue to improve his handball and kicking skills to become a regular senior player. Mick wasn't the king of the North Melbourne dressing room, he was more like the prince. He wasn't loud like Peter Keenan, or out there like Brett Croswell, but locker number 22 was right in the middle of the change rooms. Me and Shimmer on one side and Dempsey on the other. He treated every player the same. It didn't matter whether you were a first-year player or a regular senior player. Mick was a no-fuss footballer. He didn't need any fiery speeches to play well. He knew he had to train hard, do your best every match regardless of the scoreboard. He became a fan favourite, the galloping gasometer as Lou Richards called him. But to many of us he was just known as the gentle giant. By 1975 Mick had established himself as the #1 ruckman at North, and around that time the fitness staff placed a great emphasis on your playing weight. We had to weigh ourselves every night before training, and now Mick faced a big problem. The term we now know as upsizing. At the bottom end of Queensbury Street was the North Melbourne Railway Yards, with a canteen for railway workers. It was also open to the public. It suited me being a student. It was 1975 with 1960 prices. The ladies behind the counter would recognise the galloping Somerville as he came in. He would walk out with a salad roll that's twice the size of anyone else, as well as a sweet slice thrown into it for good measure. He never told me whether he ate all of his lunch or only half before training. But he faced this problem on a regular basis when he called into cafes for lunches. The second football lesson Mick taught me was in my first game against St Kilda Barabba. After a good first quarter, North led by 2 or 3 goals. As I jogged to the quarter-time huddle, Mick grabbed my jumper and stopped me. Just then, Barassi arrived at the huddle and started to give Gary Cowden an awful spray. Mick explained later, never arrive at the huddle first. Because Barassi will remember a mistake you made and he'll let you know all about it. Thanks, Mick. I carried that out in my short career. In 1975, Mick had his best season for North. He was mixing with the best ruckman in the league, using his size to palm the ball to his on-ballers, mark the ball around the ground, and becoming a dangerous marking option when resting deep in the forward line. He played in North's first premiership in 75 and finished third in the best and fairest, which was a great achievement. In North's 1975 premiership team, there were 7 future AFL Hall of Famers. He had come a long way from his first training session at the Rovers. I admired and respected Mick as a great ruckman and team player, and we always remembered it was Mick who gave me my first kick in senior L&N footy and my first kick in my senior first game against St Kilda. It's sad he's not with us tonight, but it's tested to Mick's stand in the football community that he's remembered for his talent, his love of the game, his fair play, his sportsmanship. Mick's induction to the L&M Hall of Fame is well deserved, and thank you to the L&M once again for recognising Mick as a great player, a teammate and a contributor to the game of Aussie rules football. And in finishing, I'd just like to pass on my congratulations to the other inductees to the L&M Hall of Fame. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I just had a couple of quick comments. Obviously, the starting eligibility for Mick is from Wangaratta Rovers, so just reminding a couple of premierships, best and fairest. He's in the Wangaratta Rovers Hall of Fame. But then when he went on to North Melbourne, he's a North Melbourne player, over 100 games. He's a life member. He's in their Hall of Fame. But what is downplayed a little bit and not known a lot is that Alan Aylett recruited Mick to be the ambassador for footy in Queensland. Of course, he went on as a playing coach at Maine in Queensland. They won premierships. So Mick is also in the QAFL or the QAFL Hall of Fame, and he's a life member of the Queensland AFL. And he was also the state coach of Queensland in 1987. So he's a man who's made an enormous contribution at Tarawinti in the O&Ks in their Hall of Fame. So Ovens and King, Ovens and Murray, North Melbourne, the AFL and Queensland footy. Could you please put your hands together for Mick Nolan? Ladies and gentlemen, we'll have a break for about 20 minutes for some fellowship. Thank you.